Welcome to Between Two Clinicians, the podcast that gives you a backstage pass into the mind of two therapists. I'm Talia.
I'm Adam Luke. We've spent years helping others navigate the complexities of their minds and relationships.
In this podcast, we're flipping the script, and we're sharing our own unfiltered insights. No topic is off limits, and no issue too taboo. We're ready to tackle the tough stuff with honesty and empathy. Let's dive in.
Well, hello, and welcome to another conversation. I am Adam Luke. I am sitting here with the wonderful Talia.
Talia Bombola.
And we have quite the chat.
Have we got a show for you?
Yeah, we have a show for you for sure. What we're actually talking about is something that both of us had talked about. This has bubbled up this week for us as we've been sitting with clients. And so the structure of today is we're going to be calling it holding the frame. Looking in at the boundaries, the rules, and the structure in therapy. Because when we start off in therapy, we sometimes start to apply that thought process of therapy is like any friendship that we've developed. And there can be an ease in sort of building that therapeutic rapport, but there's also a need for structure. And so how do we navigate it? And also, how do we not misread cues? Is your therapist really a rude asshole, or do they have boundaries?
Yes. And it can feel like a personal attack, even though most boundaries should ideally be. And okay, two things I want to say before we dive in. When we're talking about boundaries in therapy, this is maybe a bit different than the language that gets floated around the mental health space of boundaries are how you'll conduct yourself. It's not how another person should operate, right? Like a boundary isn't, you can't do that, is essentially, and which is true of relational boundaries. When we're talking more so in today's episode, we are kind of defining it that way because it's rules, it's an informed consent. Hey, here are the rules of therapy, and here is what is and is not included in the therapeutic relationship. Here's the roles of the client, here's the roles of the therapist, here's what they aren't. That, keep in mind, that might be interchangeable language that we're using today. And the goal is every therapist should, putting in quotes, should have a clear list and clear informed consent paperwork and clear objectives and treatment plans when they are doing work in therapy. And if they don't, that is the fault of the therapist, and the necessity to have the therapist implement that should not fall on the client. And if they do have that and the client is the one that's not following it or feels like it's a personal attack, where was the lack of clarity? Like, true. We all signed the stuff for, our devices or whatever else. I don't know how many people actually stop to read every single line of that. You should, especially when it comes to this relationship. I didn't sign that. IP address at this date, blah, blah, blah. Really? I didn't mean it.
That's the best. I didn't mean it.
Okay, well, I do mean it. It's my paperwork. You signed it. I'm going to charge for the late cancellation, or I'm going to cancel the session because I didn't receive your paperwork 48 or 24 hours ahead of time. So there are certain rules. Maybe we should talk about those. What's the general standard of boundaries and rules in therapy, and where sometimes they can go. The client wishes they weren't there, or they can go a little different ways. What do you think are the most important ones?
Yeah, I think a great starting point is just to speak about what is informed consent. Informed consent is it needs to be a structure that you walk through because it helps you understand, what am I actually getting myself into? So within that informed consent, you're going to find out what the fee structure is, how you pay, when you pay, what amount you pay. You're also going to know whether there are late fees, what do cancellation fees look like. And it's important for you to know this because this is what we're going to do. We're going to treat that space with respect. So that's when I talk to clients who maybe they talk about they struggle with having to pay a cancellation fee or whatnot. Now, my structure is kind of loosey-goosey and in a way of, I believe that accidents happen. So if my client legitimately says my kid broke their arm, guess what? No problem. Family emergency, waiving that fee. Totally. If your kid ends up breaking their arm 4 or 5 times, I have questions. on
I may need to make some calls as well.
octopus you mated with. Okay, like this doesn't make sense. Or you know, the best was I had a client a long time ago that I just totally had forgot about this, but their grandfather had died 3 times. And I'll never forget how I caught onto that. Like, because I'm not trying to be a detective. They're, oh, my grandfather, oh, no, I'm so sorry to hear that. And then he used the last one he had sent to me, and it brought up the chain of like,
oh no,
your grandpa's died 3 times. Like, what is going on here? But these are the situations of like, hey, accidents happen, no problem, but this is also accountability. Like, imagine on the other side of things, if I just was flippant, maybe I made enough money this week and I decided not to show
have a business.
session. Like that, you would be furious. Wait a second, I set out time, I made sure I'm here, I'm ready to go. And so this is a way that we both keep ourselves accountable. And just to add one more story, I had a client that I really appreciated. This is the first time that I got some solid pushback on my side, which was I had a family emergency. I had to cancel like 5 minutes before session. And then we jumped to the next session, and I just had a brain fart. He didn't show up. I went ahead and charged him. And I'll remember him going like, Adam, but like, yeah, I'm sorry. I slept past whatever it was, but I just like made that, I made some flexibility for you here. And I do think that meeting each other in like the spot of being human, like, okay, yeah, you're absolutely right. Let me just credit that and we'll move forward. Yes. But if you don't read all of your informed consent, that's not necessarily on me. Now, I will ask clients, I'll say, do you want to walk through our intake paperwork, or you feel competent that you went through it, that you know everything, anything pop up? I document that on my side for later. And then we're moving on, because we need to get into what do these other things look like. Now, I think when people think boundaries, how do you handle talking about what happens if you meet a client out in the wild?
Yes, or on social media. I have that in mind too, because both you and I have platforms, and often we meet them through that platform. The rule on that, I agree with everything that you shared. I have very firm, and I actually write that on my website before they're even allowed to submit a get started now form. And then typically they want to move right to scheduling, because I'm already very clear, and the paperwork's just a further reiteration of that. When you meet your client out in the wild is something that is discussed in that. I don't put that on the website, but that's in the paperwork. And I kind of piece together. There's some clients where I'm like, I'm literally never going to run into them. I don't need to really go over it right now preemptively. And there are some that mention like a place I go to, a neighborhood. I'm like, oh yeah, I know of that place. It actually brings up a great point. In therapy, when I'm like, as your therapist, it's weird. It's like seeing a dog walk on its hind legs. It's like seeing a teacher, right? When you're at the grocery store. Like, they don't live at school, but little kids are like, what? Mrs. Johnson's in line 7 at Ralph's? Like, you buy cucumbers too?
Like, yes.
So very, very similar experience emotionally evoked for the client / little kid, who sees the teacher. In that case, you're allowed to go, the teacher would be allowed to go up, but they probably wouldn't, just because they're like, this is my break. I don't want to do work, and I'm not at work. I'm just trying to go to get the groceries to go home from the school that I have to go see these kids at tomorrow. Yeah. We don't go up to you as the therapist. Correct. We will not acknowledge you. If we glance, at most I've seen it and done a double take and just kind of looked away, we will reorient to not rupture. If you choose to come up to us, that's a different story. And you choose to introduce us as whomever to whomever you're with, that is also your doing. I typically just nod and smile. Oh, hello. I don't confirm or deny, even if oh my God, this is my therapist, blah, whatever. I don't say anything to that effect. I'm just like, oh, hello, nice to see you, or nice to meet you, nice to see you, and I walk away. I'm not like, oh, see you next Tuesday. I'm not going to act like I do in the lobby when I'm closing a session and saying all right, see you next week. I wouldn't do that.
The Carol? Yeah. That when you talk about
I laugh, right? Oh, your mother-in-law. How wonderful. Hello, Elaine. I'm not going to be doing not a real mother-in-law name. Line I have. That's just a mother-in-law name that popped in my head, to my knowledge, I should say. that
Cannot
we will
confirm
not
or
come up
deny.
to you, right? Like we will not come up to you, and on social media, we will not and should not engage with you. If you leave a comment, we will not be commenting back. If you send a DM, I will not be acknowledging it in any form. If you want to bring it into session, at most, I would look at it then and process it with you in person. I can't stop, like, I can't go in and block, like, inadvertently, you can't go in and block all of your clients because that would be admitting you have the like. There's so much nuance to it. I just leave it be and don't acknowledge or interact if it would be potentially like unethical or concerning. So I think it's worth noting some of the boundaries are so clearly laid out in the beginning. It's part of your paperwork, and it's what almost every therapist ethically and legally has a duty to uphold. Right. And then there are some boundaries or rules that or you can individualize, like a cancellation policy, great to have. Some are 24, some are 48 hours, some are 12 hours. So there can be nuance. It's not to say that every therapist must have the exact same of all of these. Some, yes, but for some there is wiggle room or flexibility. Some therapists are telehealth only. Some are licensed in multiple states. Some only see in office, and some only see couples in person, but they offer telehealth, right? These are the nuances it's important to ask about that we don't often think to if we're not in the field, and they're not
like something
designed,
that I bring up because I'm licensed in multiple states is I have to disclose that I
Yes.
may not be in the state that they are in.
Correct.
Right. So that's something that we have to have that conversation, because you need to know, sure, there's still a level of accessibility you have to me, but you're not going to be able to drive down the street. The way that it works is like, here I am in Tennessee. I see clients in California.
Yes.
I'm able to go ahead and see that client in California. I cannot turn around and see that client when they're in Utah.
That's what the client has to be in the state that
has to be in the state that I'm licensed in.
Yes. Yeah. And you can be licensed in multiple states, and then across country. There's
all sorts of things.
So,
especially if you start talking about like the counseling pact and stuff like that.
Yeah, that goes very deep into the nuance. But like some of the other structures and frames, and like analytic therapy uses the word containment. The goal and role of therapy being ideally the same time, the same place. If you're in your office, it's definitely the same place. Even if it's Zoom, the client might not be in the same place. And if it's telehealth, it still needs to be treated just as seriously as an in-person session.
Absolutely.
The amount of times I've even had to work with my supervisees on this where the client's driving. No.
We're not doing that.
Pull over. Like, it doesn't mean you can't do therapy from your car. Sometimes that's your only private space. I'm fine with that. Or if you want to,
a lot of my stay-at-home moms will do it from inside their van.
Yes. Yeah. Or if you want to be on headphones on a walk talking about your shit, I can't stop you from that. That's fine. And walk and talk therapy is a thing, but that's different consent. Like, you obviously know it's different confidentiality if we're on a walk where there might be other people. So again, there's a lot of nuance to what rule we're talking about for containment. Right. The goal is we meet, hopefully, same time every week for the same amount of time. The session time is predetermined, and there are times during session where we might need to go over, or the client is requesting it, etc. This is where the boundaries piece comes in. If you acknowledge it's a one-time thing, if you already have in your paperwork there's going to be an increased fee, and you remind them of this, if it's not going to negatively affect other therapeutic relationships, meaning you're not running late into somebody else's, and it's not setting up an enabling behavior, or you're not going in and rescuing the client from something by not ending it, right? All those parameters we just listed.
Absolutely.
Okay. Then you might break frame of a typical 50-minute session. Then you have to add in the nuance. Are you trying to bill through insurance? Are you doing a super bill? Are you this? Sometimes that isn't allowed. That's where people are like, well, they basically are expecting private pay level therapy, but using insurance. And that's not how it works, because there are other laws and rules governing if you do take insurance, how many sessions you're allowed to have. What does it cover? What do your notes look like? We don't like when you audit you, yank treatment.
Yeah.
Right? That's a
clawbacks. There's a whole that could be an episode that we need to do one day of like why I just straight up don't accept insurances because of just how invasive it is in the process.
Yes.
Now, what's interesting is, I would love for the listeners out there to sort of take an inventory of yourself right now of like, when we talk about boundaries, what pops up for you? Like, does boundaries feel like rejection? Do they feel like a punishment? I have a client that's popping up in my head right now where having to put out boundaries and saying, because essentially our spheres of influence were pretty darn close because we were going to the same CrossFit gym at the same time. And I didn't know that at the beginning. And we sort of just like realized 4th or 5th session in that she was going to the morning classes and I was going to the evening classes, right? So when she brought that up and she talked about which gym she was at, that's where, okay, we need to talk about that because there's this chance, right? I said, you know, I go there as well. There's times that our path is going to cross. She found out that I was going in the evening and she started going to the same class that I was going to. And it, you know, first time, innocent mistake or the schedule flips around, there's no issue, right? But then it was like every single time. And I started asking, I said, you know, we've essentially been going to the same place for months and we never ran into each other. This came out into a session. Now we're in that same class together. And she's like, well, it's so nice to be able to work out with you. And it's like, well, but that's not. And for anyone who's done CrossFit, sure, you do it in a group, but everyone's WOD is their individual WOD. So it's not like I was spotting her.
Right.
But it was like this pseudo relationship that was developing, that this is the gray area of it. Like that. And so we had to talk about professional capacities. I actually like to go at it from a different level as a therapist, because a lot of times I can align with what the client's feeling. Like I had a client that recently graduated out of services with me. And he said, I would, you know, is there any way we could go to coffee? Is there any way we could go have lunch? Is there any way, like now, like, I just don't want to lose access to you. And I was like, well, actually I can feel that pain with you.
Yeah.
I said, what people don't understand is, as a therapist, I still have clients in the back of my head that I wonder where their story went.
Totally.
Like, but that's also like the blessing and the curse is like, I got to know for a season of time and now I have to trust the process. And I wish them the absolute best.
Yes.
But I don't get to know.
No. And unless we're going on leave, like I had this come up around maternity leave, obviously there's a certain point within person even if you're like, no, they're like, okay, sure, Jan, like obviously something's going on. Then why would you need to go on leave if you're not? So I saw telehealth up until like 9 months. None of them knew because they had sometimes graduated right before and they naturally, right? Like I look blown out, but like you're not seeing it, you know. That's me talking about myself. I look back, I was like, my face was so swollen and inflamed. How did they not piece it together? But that's an aside. Anywho, some of them never needed to know because Adam's losing his shit.
It's just like, it's not, you're not really selling yourself that well right now. I'm all blown out. Like,
I was like, Jesus, like I was huge. I was so uncomfortable and swollen and full of fluid. Like, oh, how did they not, piece it together? In person, my clients were like, are you sure you don't want to go and leave sooner? Like, are you okay? And I'm like, I'm good. You're paying me for my mind, not my body. Not that kind of
away
job.
From destruction.
Yeah, right. Like, I would tell my masseuse, like, can you just not slit my wrist like that? But like, can you just make an incision and like drain some of the fluid? Like, I was so miserable. Anyway, back onto the maternity leave piece of it. I had clients have very strong reactions that I was abandoning them to have my own baby.
Absolutely.
And some of them were working through fertility, abortion. What are the other? Should we have another kid or not? Anything related to family fertility, infertility space. Those were difficult and more tactful conversations that I would have to have when mentioning that versus other ones that were like, oh, but how am I going to get my work done? Like a lot of them had strong personal reactions. Some were more like worried of like, oh, are you, those kinds of things. And others were like, I mean mine, which is fine because it's your therapy. Of course you want to know how it's going to affect you. Here's what I'm planning for. Here's what I'm this. I moved to telehealth before because it was during fall, like for health reasons. I didn't want to expose myself to any illness. Like I was very clear though on laying out the structure. So even when they had strong reactions, I could contain them as much as I could more easily because I had the clear plan. I'm going to go on leave eventually. And then clients are like, when are you going to abandon me? Every week. Like, is it now? Is it now? You have to have a plan. And to your point of reaching out and wondering, there were some that I didn't have reach back out. This is one of the clinically appropriate times to reach out to your clients. Typically, we do not. We do if we have to reschedule, right? Or if something comes up. But when there's been a pause in sessions that is planned by the therapist, meaning they went on leave or a break, then ethically we will reach back out and say, hey, so-and-so, would you like to resume sessions? I am back in the office. And I tried maybe once or twice. And then I sent out like the New Year reminder that went to B2C to all of my clients. And after that, I'm not going to be anymore. My site hasn't changed. They know where to find me. I still think of them fondly and wonder how they are.
Absolutely.
I have one client where we are like telepathically connected, and I thought of her, and then a week later she's like, I thought of you, and then we meet every so often. Those ones hold, near and dear.
Absolutely.
There are times where I've broken frame with those specific ones of like, this has been in a dream recurring for the last 6 days. I know this sounds weird, but like, are you okay? Like, I'm not offering a session or anything. Sometimes they're like, oh my gosh, that's so weird. I was thinking of you too. Yeah, everything's great. I'm like, okay. Those are the more woo-woo clients. Again, that's not typical, but we don't usually reach out unless there's a specific reason. I've reached out for clients on like their birthday or like a graduation band on Monster, or when clients invite you, or when they invite you to go to special occasions. I remember one training I took years ago at a conference said that you can go and attend and you stand in the back and no one even has to know that you're there or in what capacity. Yes, you don't go and announce yourself as the therapist, but if it's a really pivotal moment and
Gary had a problem with all of you.
Right? I think everybody that came up in our sessions, I'm going to give you my card after, right? Like, not every relationship's unethical. Pour the wine. No, that they're not talking, right? Operational definition. Attending it doesn't mean making yourself the center of attention or even talking to anyone.
Correct.
Standing in the back. I have stood in teenage clients' plays in the back for their solo event. Like, some of them know I'm there. Some of them, they know I'm there because they invited me, but they don't necessarily see me because they're on the stage or whatever it is. Right. But like, I'm like, oh,
you do a great job of also just bringing up that like this does come down to a case by case basis of like,
absolutely.
When you're just talking about like standing in the back of a child's play. I remember when I was pre-licensed, I had a client that I worked with that was young, had massive social anxiety. We worked together really well for 6 months. They got into a position where they went in for the school play. They got the part of Peter Pan, and they asked me if I would show up. And so then you have to sit there within the context of how are they conceptualizing this, right? It's great that the parents can also consent. I basically just drafted up a different little letter saying that this is the role that I'm going to have. I'm going to come in, I'm going to view, and then I will leave, right? And parents were all in, but the idea of like leaving that kid hanging would have been detrimental to that growth structure that they were looking at. Like for him to just be able to look in, see me in the audience, see that smile hit his face, and then perfect. Like and we ended up not working that much together afterwards. Like that, the kid just needed that push, and poof, he's on. Yep. But it's funny because you're also bringing up like the funerals are interesting parts. A lot of times I've gone to those funerals because if I've been working with a couple and let's say, God forbid, one of them passes away, the spouse needs the support. And the support can just simply be, a shake of hand, a nod, a visualization of, I'm around when it's good for you.
Yes.
Now, something that I guess will push the boundaries on a little bit, but I called camped, I called AAMFT, I made sure that I was legal beagle on this. I'm about to officiate my third wedding of a client. And so how do you navigate that? I think, again, it comes back to explain, right? Why would you want to include me in that? Some of them, it's because we did premarital counseling and they aren't religious and they don't have someone that they think they would like to have as an officiant, and so I step into that process. But again, there's an outline of what are we doing.
Hey there, listeners. Are you tired of settling for less than you deserve in your relationships? Do you ever feel like you're not being seen, heard, or valued the way that you want? Or maybe you've been wondering why you keep attracting the same kinds of people into your life. or why certain patterns seem to repeat themselves in your relationships. The answer might be deeper than you think, and you can find it in my new course. Rewire Your Relationships is a transformative course designed to help you stop settling for less than you deserve and start embodying your most confident, assertive, and authentic self in your relationships. You'll explore how your early experiences and parental influences have shaped your views on love, dating, and self-worth. This isn't just about tips and tricks for dating. It's about understanding the core beliefs that drive your relationships that you attract. You'll learn how to break free from those old patterns and start creating the kind of connections that truly reflect who you are. Imagine stepping into a relationship with clarity and confidence, knowing you're attracting people who value and respect you for who you really are, your deeply authentic self. The Rewire Your Relationship course gives you the tools to rewrite your relationship story, one where you're no longer settling, but thriving. Visit taliabombola.com/rewireyourrelationships or check the link in the show notes for more.
We could make a decision that works for us and the therapeutic relationship for the client that is legal and ethical. I want to be very clear. Not, I made a decision to sleep with my client. They were okay with it. No, that is never okay. First, that's a whole other episode. We have a literal brochure in our profession called Professional Therapy Should Never Include Sex. The fact that it happened enough that we now have a brochure is of great concern, and it has not stopped anyone. That's, again, a separate episode.
The best is knowing people who have handed out the brochure and still had sex with their clients.
It's not how-to. It's not how professional therapy can include sex. That's not the brochure. It should never. It should never include it because of the power dynamics.
Damn fine print.
That's right. Oh, I read it wrong. I didn't sign that. I didn't see the back page. That could actually be a whole other episode, just that boundary violation specific the power dynamic of it. There are times where within legal and ethical guidelines, we are in agreement with the client that if somebody else heard it, they'd be like, what? Adam asphyxiated butts?
Yeah.
They can make a report to the board. If you have not verified what you are doing out of the norm, so to speak, but still in ethical and legal, is indeed in the ethical and legal, that it's not the client that's going to get you, quote unquote, in trouble, or the behavior. In that case, your lack of verifying would have been. It's other people who hear that. And and I say this because I have been the therapist who has overheard in gym locker rooms, in workout class, people open up to us because we're therapists, or they come and say, I know you are one. Is this normal? Because I heard this and therapist said this, this, and that. And I'm like, I now have an ethical obligation to report this person to the board. I don't know what they're going to do with it, but there's going to be an investigation. You never know what information is going to leave your office. As long as you have clear paperwork and you verified and have the paper trail, we have malpractice and like we are working with people ideally who are stable, but there are populations when we're in training, especially, we're not working with people who are mentally stable, or in reality, as I word it, they're going to be more likely to have a negative perception or a paranoid perception and make an accusation or a bad review or anything like that. That's another one. We cannot respond to Yelp reviews, Google reviews, anything like that, even if you aren't our client, because how would we prove that you aren't?
You can't confirm or deny.
And we can't even say something to that effect. So it's a very unique profession that it can be forward facing, but there are still parameters of how and who we're allowed to communicate with. So if you are flexing, right, that other note, like the flex, is it flexibility that you are engaging in, or is it almost like codependency? Because a lot of therapists are covering codependence. They just have channeled it for helping and healing others.
Weaponized it into getting paid.
Weaponized codependency for a career? No, but there's something special about I want to help others. So if I want to help others, I also need to have strong boundaries. Otherwise, clients are going to be like, oh, can you do 7 a.m.? No. Can you do 12 midnight? No. And if that is when you work and it's in your boundaries, great. You can say yes. It's not about the specific chronological times. This is not my office hours. I don't respond on non-work days. I'm out of office. Am I actually out of office? I have a bit more flexible now just because I don't have we have a set but not standardized necessarily every week with a timeshare schedule. So I don't have the same sessions every week anymore. I hated that because I loved that level of containment, but I at least now have month to month. So that's the compromise. I can't schedule as far out, but I have more monthly flexibility. So it ends up working well. When I'm flexible, it's within my flexibility and availability. And I have to be clear on that with clients. If there's a client who's like, I absolutely need the same time every week, I maybe have like 1 or 2 of those I can reasonably offer. The rest, I am forthright. This is how my schedule works. If that doesn't work for you, I'm going to let you know ahead of time so we don't dive into anything. And if something comes up and they need to reschedule, I offer virtual. If they can't do that, I may have an extra time slot. If not, there's a cancellation fee. And this is where I've heard, and we've talked about it, this is a business. I'm not saying that to be inhuman. Like you said earlier, if you were just loosey-goosey, willy-nilly, you wouldn't have a business.
Correct.
If we did all of the things that clients do but expect to not get held accountable to, or for, whatever, not punished for, but like, oh yeah, no charge, no this, no that, it would be not ethical, and you would lose your business because no one would come to you if it's like, well, I hope you didn't make enough so I can still have my set. Like, no one would run a business that way. And again, you want to have your clients feel held in positive care and regard and boundaries, and that's part of the boundary. We even have it at the other place of work.
The worst therapy that you can potentially have is therapy that has inconsistent boundaries.
Yes.
It's extremely chaotic.
Or way too flexible. And
it's like, no, we don't want it to be so fluid that there is no structure here. And that's what at times you can feel clients sort of push it to that direction. Why? Because we like to go to what's familiar, right? So
that's what they do in the rest of their life.
Yeah, chaos starts to feel like a security blanket.
Yes.
So it's like, oh, well, I like that. And so it is rough because as a therapist, you do have to sit there and think about what is the countertransference. Like, wait a second, I want to be present for that person. Well, but within the ethical and the legal structure, where is it in this? A lot of times you gotta sit like, actually, what I said was ethical and legal. And so I don't need to have an emergency session at 11 o'clock, right? I had a client reach out on Easter, wanted to have a session because they were triggered. I'm sorry, I'm with my family. I have my own things. So what did I do? I normally have like a handful of worksheets ready to go. Sent that back to them. Said, hey, hop into the portal, set up an appointment. We will sit down and process this.
Yeah.
And some people go, well, but you left them hanging. How about there's also this other side of it, which is we need to empower clients to believe that they can handle what life throws at them. If I immediately went, oh, poor baby, you can't do this yourself. What am I actually validating? I'm validating that they cannot go through their life without someone. I'm not looking as a therapist to build hyper-dependent individuals who essentially are going to just be annuity streams. Like, and that's what you need to ask yourself is like, when your therapist makes themselves present for you, is it in a capacity that empowers you, or is it in a process that empowers them?
Yes. And ideally what you're doing is in service of the client, right? This is where they reach out and this happened this week. Again, this week has just been a week. This happened this week and I'm looking at it and I'm like, I literally have like one thing I could possibly offer, maybe 2, but it's going to be a phone call instead of a this and a whatever else. And I was like, but then I looked at if I let it go until the next time, there's going to be more cleanup. And it just was like one of those judgment calls of like, okay, I have this. And they were like sending me other stuff. And I was like, this is the availability. I'm not jumping through hoops. I'm not looking at your calendar. I'm not, and this is not disrespectful, but these are just like rules of like, this is the way it's going to go. If you reach out to me asking for a specific need, I deem and triage, yes, that's like a meritable thing. Let's meet earlier than expected. Here's what I have. It's in this. You can restructure your life to what I have. I'm not going to bend over backwards and go in my way and restructure something because of your emergency. Your emergency is not my emergency. I'm willing and able to make an exception this one time for further support. Here is what is available. Or I have teens that are like, oh, I missed it because I slept through, or I had practice or whatever else. Can I just come in tomorrow? I'm not always here. Like, and again, this isn't knocking them because as a teen, I'm sure I had an expectation of maybe 9 to 5 business hours or something to that effect, or 1 to 8, whatever, because that made sense in the teenage mind. but there's like egoism that can come in of the therapist is always available. The therapist will drop everything. Where else do you treat people like that in your life? Did your parents set the tone that was what they were going to do, right? Anything that they bring up is an enactment often of what they were raised to believe was acceptable or normal or they're entitled to. So being able to agree in some cases, yes, I can meet, or I had one client a long time ago struggling with a breakup, and I just so happened to see one of the notes while I was on a walk on a Saturday, and I'd worked with them for a really long time, and I was like, I mean, I have time for a phone call right now for like 5 or 5 minutes, and they were like, I actually need, and I said, I don't usually work on a Saturday, but we can do a phone session for X amount of time, whatever else. And they were like, okay. And that was so helpful for them. And that was the only time they ever asked for an experiment. So making those judgment calls, you can't bend a boundary or break frame when there is no frame. That's just loose, no structure. You can only bend and flex once there is structure. And when you bend and flex, it has to be for the betterment of the client, it justifiably within the ethical and legal parameters. Absolutely. And we are human, right? Like what happens, we might make a judgment call and be like, that actually did not help the client out to do this. Whoops, learned my lesson, won't do it again.
For sure.
We go back and listen to the rupture episode where we have to make a repair if that did cause a rupture rather than maintain the frame. Sometimes the flex creates a rupture. Sometimes the flex further supports the frame. This is where it's helpful for us to know there are these rules for a very valid reason, and we need to have that stability so you can learn more secure attachment to eventually not. My goal is to have you not come in anymore, but maybe want to once a year pepper in, hey, this is all that I've accomplished and I'm just growing and growing from there. That's the goal. It's not that we do the same clients every week forever. That would not, you're not effective if that's the case.
I always tell people this is the only career that you'll have where you're actually like trying to work yourself out of a career.
Yes.
I would like people to get healthier. So we're going to go from weekly to bi-weekly to monthly to, like you said, these are the natural progressions of what we're trying to do. And that helps them also not feel bad. Like I still laugh to this day when I had a client last week was like, I think I'm ready to go monthly. Perfect. Wonderful. I said, well, but you're okay with that? Like, I'm like, yeah, why? And I get more clients that are worried for, well, I mean, but like financially that'll change things up. Financially was never a part of this discussion.
No.
Like, when we did the informed consent, I told you what you were paying per session. That applies regardless. So there, but yeah, and I'll never. It's a great point because when we had our second Jackson, I had a client that was like, oh, but I don't want to drop off right now because you're just having a baby. And I said, that's so kind. I'm flattered, but I want you to know that I'm going to be completely fine.
And that cannot be
like in no way, shape, or form.
That's not their responsibility.
It's not their responsibility, but it's a way that they feel like they can be helpful.
Right.
Like I also navigate this a lot with like clients that may be celebrities, maybe influencers. The first thing I start hearing after we start making like traction, it's like, oh, can I shout you out? Can I like, and that's where it's like, dear God, please no. Like I can't control what you do, but there's a reason why I also don't allow myself to be tagged in anything. It's the only way that I can control that someone's not going to like shout me out.
Yes.
And it's not because I'm embarrassed. It's because very few relationships in certain individuals' lives end up not being parasitic. Where it's like in just the culture of whether it's a celebrity or it's an influencer, like there's always like, oh, we're doing these collabs, but they're not necessarily unconditional positive regard. It's like, oh, I hawk your product, you hawk my name, and I don't need you to I don't need you to build up my follower count. Like,
no, I would rather have a client, a PNC, potential new client, reach out, or a warm lead, whatever you want to use language wise. I would rather that come from a warm referral, somebody personally telling them, I worked with so-and-so, they helped me with this, reach out, which happens. I would say this many years into business is the main source of my referrals. And the podcast is my other one. Being on other people's podcasts, how I show up on podcasts is very much how I would show up in session for the most part, obviously with confidentiality and everything, a bit when I'm with a client, but my attitude, my like all of that is very congruent from my personal, professional, I don't have, sometimes I have a customer service voice, but I'm real on podcasts, and people are like, I just like how genuine you were. I felt like I was having a conversation with you. I want to work with you. I'll accept the real collabs because it was me on a podcast. But when it's a client thing, thankfully that has not come up. But this is the only sacred relationship. This is the only relationship where unless you say so, no one knows it exists. How cool is that? Like, again, that gets abused. Obviously, I'm not talking about that, but in the sanctity and like the sacredness of the client therapist relationship and mental health and healing, this works this way for a reason, because you are not our friend, and because we have so many boundaries and structure and parameters and legal and ethical guidelines. All of that's out of the way, but holding the frame. So when you get into the room or the office or the Zoom room, we get to just be with your material and help you, and you help yourself, and we meet in this like mutual expertise of you're the expert on your life and what you want changed, even if you don't know how to fix it and change it. We're the expert on what we've trained in our own life and transference and counter and pulling that in. How can we work together so you don't need me anymore and have availed yourself? And it's not going to end up like the giving tree, which is this stump at the end of the book that's like, I'm just glad I got to help them.
Freaking kills me every time.
If I just had no boundaries, that would be what happens. But in the end,
sad.
I'm still a strong tree, because the rule is you get an apple. You try to take a branch, no. You're only come right for an apple. And the client goes, I really needed that. And if they need the whole thing, maybe they need more support or whatever else. But this frame and the structure.
And you nailed it, because I think we can actually be honest and say most of our colleagues that get burned out in this industry turn into giving trees. They allow and I'm not sitting here saying like there was one therapeutic alliance that I actually ended up processing with my own therapist, because there was a moment where I can see that the countertransference was there, not necessarily in any legally or ethically malleable ways, but the success I wanted to have for the client wasn't necessarily healthy for me to hold as a therapist. I could see what the potential of what this person could become. And I wanted that so bad for them, and inevitably they made a choice of that's not actually what they wanted to pursue, and they went back to maladaptive behaviors. It was a very abrupt break off of therapy services, just because the client was basically like, I'm going to go back to what I've been doing. And you sit there and you want to rack your brain and think about like, well, what didn't I do right? What was the interventions? What could have I done? And it comes down to actually processing out loud that it wasn't about you saving them. Like, and that's why I like to have boundaries, because it allows me to have a much easier position of accepting that whatever my client chooses to do in their life, that doesn't mean that I enabled them or I co-signed them. And whatever they decide to do with their lives is their own decision,
free will,
free of my accountability.
Autonomy and agency. And even when clients are like, just tell me what to do, sometimes I'm like, okay, do this. I'm joking, obviously. And they're like, but I'm like, see, you already proved your point that you're not going to do it, even if I told you exactly what to do. I could give you a literal list and you could be like, I don't like, so great, then you modify it. This is just a framework, right? And this is where the framework of therapy and informed consent and all of that, that's not like, those are not suggestions. Those are hard and fast rules that then within the play space of once the boundary is set, okay, let's see what we can work on. Let's see what but that's already clearly laid out. It's not the same if you were starting out and along the way, you're like, oh, actually, no, I charge for cancellations. They're like, wait, what? But you've never done that before. Like you can't spring it on people. So as the therapist, the business owner, the frame is there to protect you and the client. And as the client, the frame is there to protect you as a client, because there are certain each of those roles has accountability to themselves and to the profession, or to like their own autonomy or agency if you're the client. So it's there to help you, not to be a punishment to you. Should you choose to see it that way, that is your own perception. You also, it's hopefully not like forced therapy. You don't have to see me. If you don't like it, if you don't like how I run my business, if you don't like my schedule, fire me.
I always tell people, please do not even pause. If at any point our work is no longer valuable to you, please fire me.
Yeah, like maybe step one, I rewrote our policies recently, but for the other place I work, like you need to bring it up to your therapist. Do not be emailing me. Like you need to learn confrontation skills, even if you don't share why. I need to stop sessions. Okay. I might ask, right? In private practice is different. I might ask, but like, let us know if it was a rupture. Ideally, allow an opportunity for repair. If it wasn't so egregious, that would be a different reporting process if it were.
Absolutely.
Bring it up to my attention. If we can't work through it, or if there was miscommunication we can't get past, okay, then we pause or terminate. That's totally fine. But if it's not working, if it used to be working and now it's not, and we can't get past it, we can't work together anymore. Sometimes we've crossed too far. The couple develops such a negative sentiment override within the couples therapy that they can't see past, right? They're like personally victimized by the therapist, right? There's so much that we could do, like even a part 2 on this.
Oh yeah.
You are not the victim of these boundaries. They're there to support you, and they're there to make sure this profession can continue to exist, is what
you wouldn't rock climb without ropes. You wouldn't play football without chalked lines. You wouldn't play baseball without chalked lines. So, or even umpires. So, even though they kind of suck. But anyways, the reality here is like, these are our chalk lines for therapy. It's so that we can identify the field. We can identify what we're going to do, and that neither one of us is surprised in the process. Yes.
It's a highway with lines and exits and clear definite. It's the opposite. It's like, if you didn't have that, it'd be like an unmarked Trader Joe's parking lot, which is already chaotic with the lines, but it'd be even worse versus like a well-oiled machine, like a Chick-fil-A drive-through where they're
absolutely
right,
perfect.
like yes, you want. Yeah, if you don't like Chick-fil-A, then pick your most well-run restaurant by you. But like they're frame, whatever floats your boat. So we will see you again in a couple of weeks, and we have great ideas for offshoots from this episode. If you need us, or if you want to reach out and give feedback, I am on Instagram at Talia Bombola. Adam is at Wild Ethos Counseling.
Yep.
Like that. And we will see you when we see you next.
See you guys.
Thank you so much for listening to another episode of Between Two Clinicians. We would so appreciate if this episode resonated with you, for you to share it with somebody, and also find your favorite podcast platform and like, rate, and subscribe to the podcast. We would love to attract more listeners just like you and have this message be spread to whoever needs it. So thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.